RPGRules tutorial. We're going to have a look at destructible props here. So I'll just give you a quick demo of the kind of things I'm talking about. I've got Morphet here to demonstrate. If I target this oxygen capsule and destroy it, it fires off some shrapnel and leaves a flaming patch behind. If I target this street light, do a flaming bolt on that, bits of it fall off, and then it falls into three pieces. Lovely bit of programming right there. The streetlight base hasn't been damaged. No, will remain sort of electrically alive and knock me away, so it's grown an aura from being damaged until I destroy it completely. These fences over here will fall into pieces. No, that projectile's not working. Let's give it a kick. Yep, fall apart like that. If I take this earth wall and set it on fire, when it's destroyed it turns into a group of smaller rocks and some particles and so on, rather than just disappearing out of view. So there are some sort of gameplay ramifications for this. You have objects that explode in certain ways, you know, and can do damage to things around the water tower. Makes everyone wet around it when it explodes, and also just sort of, you know, it looks good. When you beat up a metal crate, it falls into different bits. When we go and beat up a rock, it falls into bits. So how are these set up? Let's have a look. If we go and select one of these rocks, the basic example, the rock medium. In the prop component, we have damage settings and damage stages. So this one doesn't have any. What it does have is parts prefab up here, rock medium parts. If we have a look at rock medium parts, that's separate prefab, and it basically spawns one of these in when the rock gets destroyed. So that's all that is. The rock medium prop has got rock medium parts there. Should be the same with the metal crates if we have a look at them. Where's a crate I can tag? Here we go. Metal crate. The prop references metal crate parts, which looks like this, which is basically 6 faces, each of which are a rigid body and a Vox collider. These ones here don't have any prop components, so RPGRules doesn't interact with them, they just stay on the ground there. With the rock case, if we have a look at that again, rock medium, the rock medium parts has a rock burst particle effect, which, you know, also has a child one which does little rocks with a mesh renderer, and the rock burst itself does some dust. These rock smalls are props that get spawned, and then the rubble is just sort of a rigid body with a lifespan, so it fades out after 12 seconds. Yep, so that's all that's doing. There is an option which you have with some objects where you, instead of having it referenced in a prefab with a parts prefab like that, we just have a folder called destroyed parts. I think this object here might have it. If we have a look at the orgone detector, that has... Yep, okay, so this is a different case. Here we've got a composite object with a cylinder. This sort of pole's got a rigid body. The 2 rings have got rigid bodies on them, and colliders and so on, and a particle system that activates at the top. And when the prop gets destroyed here, when it gets damaged, the rings, we turn off the code that's turning them round and round, This rings object here has got a turner which is just making the two rings rotate, and we turn the particle system off as well. And automatically anything with a rigid body, that's like this cylinder here which has got a rigid body which is kinematic, and each of these rings which is kinematic, it goes through and turns them all from being kinematic, turns them on basically. So that's why when we go and destroy that object we see the following things happen. There it is, it's working, the rings are turning round, it's emitting radio waves or whatever it's doing, but when we damage it, it all falls apart, it stops radiating, and eventually it blows up as well. So that bit where it blows up, that is a damage state. Right. So in the damage settings you can set up as many damage states as you want, and each of them have got a health percentage. So at 50% health nothing actually happens but this event gets called. So when we get it down to half health, it switches off the particle systems and basically turns all the physics objects on so it falls apart. When we get down to 0% health it does a fire explosion. So you can put as many things into this array as you want, so that you know at 50% health it's going to do this explosion, 0% health it's going to blow up completely, and so on and so on. And this is how you do a basic exploding crate or barrel. You know, we could mock up one pretty quickly just now. We could say game object, 3D object, cube. We'll have a cube here. Give it a prop component. Give it one damage state. So we'll give it 5 health, and it does the electrical explosion. Basic electrical explosion when it gets to 0 health. That's sort of the most basic thing you can do for a prop there. We'll give it a name, electrical box, and let's just check that that works. It's got a collider and everything on it already. So if we go to that electrical box there, let's just go and give it a kick. It's fairly low hit points. Boom! It does an electrical explosion when it's destroyed. As you can see there, it didn't look that great because, you know, the object just disappears instantly. That's why we have this idea of destroyed parts, like on the crates here. When we go and kick them, you see them visibly fall apart. Same with the rocks when we kick them. Let's have a look at these tanks here, at the various parts that are involved with them. So I'll go to the oxygen capsule, give it a kick, and you can see it's fallen over and started gouting flames in my direction. Up, and the little knob that holds it together, holds it to the wall, has fallen off now. And then when we beat it up completely, it explodes and leaves a flaming patch behind. How did it do all of that? That was the... Way around, are we? It's through here. The oxygen tank. So we've got a number of these Drex capsules, as I call them. This is Drex capsule oxygen. Drex being named after Eric Drexler, the godfather of nanotechnology. These are meant to be like sci-fi things full of particular elements for use in nanomachine construction. Right, so what does this do? When it gets to 50% health, it does a fire spray, which is a power area, a cone attack. And that cone attack will automatically get oriented to point towards the person that just hit it. So that's like, you know, poking a little hole in the tank and it starts to gout flame out of there. When it gets to 0 health, it does a fire explosion. It also does a fire patch summon. So in these explodable things here, you can basically list any power summon, power area, power projectile. You can have, like, you know, a shrapnel type effect where a grenade projectiles bounce out of it. And yep, I think that's it. You might be able to do beam. No, you can't do beams as well with arcs. So it's projectiles, power areas, and power summons can go off when something explodes like that. And the power projectiles will do a sort of random spread area kind of thing. Sort of like, you know, if you wanted to make a box of fireworks, you can have firework projectiles shoot out of it when it gets destroyed. Yep, so that's the basic way to set up different damage states. Let's just go back to that exploding box and do that. Called it electrical box, this thing, I don't know. Let's just make a quick power, just make it in the root here. Base it on grenades, and I'm going to call it fireworks. Clone grenade. So it makes all the parts here. And what we want to do with that is the projectile count will make it 4, and we'll give it an angular spread of 360, and its grenade-like things. Give it a low speed of 2, so that it sort of pops out 4 random grenades. Angular noise will make 90 degrees, so it sort of does it a little bit random. And that fireworks can now become part of the exploding box. So we'll say, make this thing, give it 50 hit points. We'll give it 2 damage states. At half health, we will make it emit fireworks. And then it'll do the electrical explosion at the end. The fireworks explosion is going to do a generic shockwave. Yeah, that's okay for demo purposes. So now when we have a look at it, go and attack it. Select the box. Kick, kick. When we get it down to half health, boom, those fireworks came out. And then when we get it down to full health, it does the explosion there. So yeah, may decide that's not really what we wanted. Let's change it a little bit, and let's make that firework projectile come out when it explodes. You know, instead of halfway through. Run over there and give it a kicking again. Let's turn into metal form and really give it a pound and boom. Yeah, so now it explodes and emits these little exploding parts. You know, you can imagine doing that with little fireballs as well, if you wanted to. Yep, the other one I wanted to show you was the water tower. An extra little feature I built in for that. So this water tower here has got 8 rigid bodies around it, this sort of wooden cladding. And when we select that, if we get it down to half health, it's going to squirt water at us, which rather awesomely puts our flames out as well. Oop. And didn't get to see that because I was using the damage over time. Let's do that again. Let's metal up and go and punch the water tower. There we go. So some of the bits fell off. It just so happened to be the ones near us. That doesn't actually have to happen that way. So how have we set that up with the water tower prefab? Camera there. We have all these bits of wood here are just rigid bodies that's set to kinematic. So when it hits any of its damage states, they would all fall off. But we have given the water tower a remain chance of 100%, which gets scaled by the health percentage, so there's a 50% chance that each piece will fall off. What that means is when we get to we could just make this 0.5, at 50% chance each bit of wood has a 50% chance to fall off. When we get down to 0, they've got a 100% chance to fall off. So that's the chance they will remain stuck to the water tower at each point. So you could put more damage states into here, and then each time you hit it, some bits will fall off, some won't, and so on. It does the water spray, power area, that's a cone, 5 meters, 90 degrees angle, that's the one the water squirts out when we get it to half health. And then when we look at it again, when it gets to 0 health, it does a water burst, which is a knockback small, makes everyone wet, big area effect in a 360 radius with this big splash visual effect. So that's what that's doing. The base and this weapon point, you have to have a weapon node in there if you want the directional cone to work. It basically takes this weapon point and orients it towards the player. So that just has to be an empty transform called weapon. We can see that as well in things like the Drex capsules. If you just go and find them, RPGRules, prefabs, level, no, prefabs, objects. Yep, these all have a weapon transform in there, and that's just used to orient a cone attack towards the person who attacked it. So you get a hole forming on this side where you've shot it from, and it squirts gas or water or whatever at you from that direction. Yeah, so that's the basics of the destructible prop system. On a prop, put as many damage states as you like in there, with a percentage of health for each one. When any of them get called, it calls an undamaged event where you can do other things like turn particle systems off or anything that sort of suggests the item is still working. Whenever any of these get triggered, any kinematic child rigid bodies will get turned on, subject to a remain chance, which is scaled with the health percentage you're currently at. And each prop as well can have a parts prefab, which gets spawned when it's completely destroyed, which is meant to be the bits of the object falling apart, like the way the rocks do or the metal crates do. So that's how to put together props which have got a little bit of life to them in RPGRules.